This is Anthony from LA Rams Central. I had already done the show. We had recorded it, but because apples are human piles of human fecal matter, it didn't stick. So now I have to redo the show a second time, this time without Eric because he's not feeling well and he had called in and we got the show done in 50 minutes. But for whatever reason, it just decided for the first time in 13 tries that this was going to be the time it wasn't going to save it. So I wasted 50 minutes of my time. And now I've wasted 39 seconds of yours explaining why this is probably going to be not as good. I'll be brief because it's just me. So I'll basically say who I'm picking and why and who Eric picked. And you won't get his insight on it because apples suck. Big time. We'll never be buying another one again. I'll stick with Windows. Thank you. At least they save your videos. That being said, now that I've given you a reason never to buy an Apple computer, the way the show is going to break down is first I'm going to explain why I'm wearing Redskin gear for a second game in a row, and why I'm wearing an Alabama hat. And then I'm going to talk about the Rams' mindset right now going into the bye week and some kind of players to look out for the second half of the season. Eric has two players that he wants you to keep in mind, keep an eye out for, and then we're going to go over our picks respectively. And, of course, before I do any of that, I'm going to talk about the debacle that was the Baltimore Ravens game. Eric's the one that usually comes in with the really cool statistics that everyone's like, oh, cool. And he had it for the Dolphin game. I think he said something like 96 points in 2 games the Ravens have scored against Miami. But I really don't know what the statistic was because that's Eric's role. My role is to give insight of the actual game and approach it from a coach's standpoint. So unfortunately, you're only going to get half of the analysis. Now, if you can tell I'm irritated, good. Because I'm irritated with the computer. First and foremost, the Rams' mindset. I said early on when we started this season, before we got into the year, that the Rams at this point of the year would be 5-2. Now, I had them losing to Dallas but beating Seattle. They lost to Seattle. They beat Dallas. They're still 5-2 going in. And right now, as the Rams coach, you've got to be thinking, especially a young coach, you've got a young team that's experiencing wins in a variety of different ways. You're beating teams you should beat. You're beating teams you're not supposed to beat. And you're darn near beating teams that you're not supposed to beat as well in Seattle and Washington. Now, at 5-2, they've got Dallas coming in, which I think is a really good game for them. The potential of it being a trap game, had there not been a bye week after the London game, would have been really, really high. But now I think the Rams get a chance to refocus because, A, Seattle plays this week against Houston. So the Rams are going to know that they need a win to keep up a half a game back behind the Seattle Seahawks because now they've lost the division lead, or do they need a win to stay a half a game in front of the Seattle Seahawks in the division race? Because ultimately, whether Seattle wins or loses is going to determine whether the Rams are up by a half a game or down a game, depending. So I want to keep those things in mind. There's 3 players in particular that I really want you guys to look out for in the second half of the season because I get the sense that they're going to have a strong season. Longacre is one of them, the Rams' backup defensive lineman. Right now, he already has 1 forced fumble and I think 2 sacks. I think he's going to end the season with 8 sacks and 2 or 3 forced fumbles. This guy is really, really starting to fit a role that is a good role to have. It's a role player on the defensive line, and much like Philly does with rotating defensive linemen, it looks like Wade Phillips likes to do that quite a bit, especially on that outside pass rush side of things. And with Robert Quinn's injuries, it's good to know that we have a playmaker who can potentially substitute for him if due to an injury or come right in outright. So I'm pretty excited to see how that's going to unfold for the rest of the season. But look for Longacre's name to pop up a lot on your radar. The other 2 that I think are going to have a really big breakout second half is going to be Jared Goff and Sammy Watkins, and I think those 2 are going to be intertwined. Now, look, Cooper Kupp is still going to have big numbers and do good things for the Rams because I think they have a good rapport. But I think as Jared Goff gets more and more confident, you're going to see Sammy Watkins be more and more a part of that offense. And I won't be surprised if there's a game or two down the stretch here where Jared Goff wins it with his right arm alone. A couple 400-yard games, maybe a 350-yard game and 4 touchdowns. But a game that he clearly is the reason the Rams won, because his growth has already been great and it's already been really high. And I'd heard that on the plane ride from London, Goff sat next to McVay the whole time. So there's also going to be a level of trust, I think, from McVay to unload more of the offense for him and see what he does with it. And I think he'll reward him, because I think he's going to have a really good second half here and really start to put more of this offense together and on his shoulders and make a statement. So look out for those 3 names: Sammy Watkins, Jared Goff, and Longacre. Now, my buddy Eric, my partner in crime, who, like I said, had done the show with me, he picked Aaron Donald and Greg Zuerlein as the 2 to look out for. Aaron Donald, he says he needs to hear more from. He doesn't know if with the holdout kind of taking its pace, taking its what's the word I'm looking for? Anyway, point is, with the holdout taking its toll, thank you, that's what I was looking for, on Aaron Donald, maybe now with the bye week, it's a time to recoup. We need to see Aaron Donald in the backfield more and be more disruptive, and that's only good news for the Rams defense and the Rams football team. Aaron Donald's played well, but he could definitely play better. And the other one that he said was Greg Zuerlein. The last 2 years, and he's right, Greg Zuerlein's really tapered off in the second half of the season, and he's looking for Greg Zuerlein to stay consistent, because right now he has the potential to be one of the top scoring player in the National Football League, but he's going to have to keep up at the pace he is and keep his accuracy, because there are going to be games down the stretch that are going to come down to his leg, and we're going to need it to come through. So those are kind of the things to think about as we move forward here. I think it's important to keep in mind that at 5-2, the Rams are in a good position. They got a very winnable game coming up, but there's a lot of football left to play, and we'll see if they can get that done. So we'll have to wait and see. Meanwhile, why am I wearing – first of all, if you guys don't know, I grew up in Arizona most of my life. So Sun Devils are a team that I root for, as is Eric's. We both went to ASU and graduated from there. But my top 2 teams in college football have always been Alabama and Notre Dame. In fact, I joke and say that I'm an Alabama Fighting Irish fan, or a Notre Dame Crimson Tide fan, if you will. When those 2 play, I don't have a care in the world. I just sit back, have a drink, and enjoy the game, because whoever wins, I win. And it's really kind of a cool experience. So those are my 2 college teams, which is why I'm wearing this. I'm wearing Redskin gear again because I figured, why not? Rams are on a bye week. I lost the bet already to Kate, so I might as well go full-blown this week in Redskin gear in honor of the Redskins, my second favorite team, but also in honor of her for the bet. Figure I'll hold up my end of the bargain. She'll have to wear Ram gear when the Rams beat Washington in the postseason if they play again. The Miami Dolphins game against Baltimore, we'll cover that one really quick, or I will cover that one really quick. Baltimore won big, shut Miami out. I don't even know where the Dolphins were. They forgot to take the flight. There were a couple hits in this game, one on the starting quarterback, one on the backup quarterback. I'm not going to get into this too much. If you think the hit that Kiko Alonso did on Joe Flacco was a dirty hit, you need to go to the grocery store and you need to pick up your Tampax right now, because you're going to need them, because you got a problem, okay? That hit was not a dirty hit. 0.3 seconds or 0.39 seconds to react isn't enough time. My wife's a scientist. She knows these kinds of things. The average human reaction time is between 0.25 seconds and 0.50 seconds. When in motion, in a full sprint, that goes up to 0.50 and 1 second. So in 0.39 seconds, when Flacco does the awkward slide, there's no choice for Kiko Alonso at that point. By the time he processes what Flacco did, he's already executing the hit. Now, some people say he threw a forearm. I think that's garbage too. He was just making a football play. Those things happen. Now, what Ndamukong Suh did to the backup quarterback, Mallet, grabbing him by the throat, that's dirty and there's no place for it. But, football for a long time has been a contact sport. and I keep hearing these twits that want to take the contact out of the sport, then it ceases to be football and there's no reason in watching it, right? So it's like the Bounty Gate thing. Everyone was on the Saints about Bounty Gate, and I remember just thinking to myself, what are we doing here? It's not a big deal. When I played in high school, we said, hey, this is their best player. He's got an ankle injury, twisted a couple extra times when you tackle him this week. And it's just how football's always been. And we're pussifying the sport beyond belief nowadays, and it's just blowing my mind as far as the stupidity goes. And eventually it's going to become unwatchable because essentially you're going to have a bunch of guys in pads that can't hit each other. Then there's hockey, where you have a bunch of guys in pads that can beat the hell out of each other, and that's where the football fans are going to go. They're not going to go to baseball. They're not going to go to basketball. They're going to go to hockey. And, I worry in the direction that the sport continues to go. But it's really annoying. So, anyway, going through our picks. I'll do my picks and then I'll do Eric's. We both picked the Minnesota Vikings. The Vikings are a better team, but we don't think this is going to be a particularly good game because we don't think the Vikings' offense is very good. But their defense is certainly better than Cleveland's offense. He said 20-9. I think more of a 13-3, 16-6 kind of game. I don't foresee it being a big game offensively or defensively, but I do see it being a Viking victory, as does Eric. The Oakland game, I picked the Raiders. I think the Raiders' win over Kansas City is getting them starting to trend in the correct direction. That was a big win at home against Kansas City. I don't care how you get it. Now they get to go on the road and kind of show what they can do. I know Marshawn Lynch is suspended. However, they still have two really good running backs in Washington and company, and I think they're going to get the job done, and I definitely think that the Bills' DBs are nowhere near as good as the Chiefs' DBs, and you saw what Amari Cooper did against Kansas City. So what is he going to do against Buffalo? Plus, they just traded one of their defensive linemen. Creates less depth for a 6th-round pick to Jacksonville. Eric, on the other hand, is picking Buffalo. He thinks that the Bills' defense is going to be able to handle Oakland, shut down the run because there is no Marshawn Lynch, and he thinks that Shady McCoy is going to have another big day. So he's picking Buffalo to beat the Oakland Raiders. We both picked Cincinnati for obvious reasons. The Cincinnati Bengals right now are just a better team than the Indianapolis Colts. I don't know what Indianapolis is going to do. They continue to struggle. They don't have much of an offense. They don't have much of a defense. Neither do the Bengals, but the Bengals are at home, and they're an infinitely better team than the Indianapolis Colts. So we're picking Cincinnati in that one. This is going to be a quick show if you couldn't tell. New England at the Santa Monica Chargers. Eric's not picking Bakersfield. He's picking New England. I'm not picking Santa Monica. I'm picking New England. That was a little joke. We've been doing that all year, and we're going to continue that trend. The Patriots over the Chargers. Look, we both think this. We both think it's going to be a close game. 48-41. You take your pick. With Hightower out for the season, this is going to be an offensive shootout. It's going to come down to who has the ball last. And I definitely believe Peyton Manning. I definitely believe that Tom Brady, I was going to say, could beat Peyton Manning more often than not, which was true already. But I do think that Tom Brady, if in the clutch you need him or Phillip Rivers to win you a game, Brady's proven it. And I just see it coming down to New England at the end, and they'll win it. Chicago at New Orleans. We both picked the Saints. I think it's going to be a close game. Eric did not do his homework. I was very mad at him and stern with him. He is going to do his homework for the next show when we do the analysis and the breakdown of these games. I think that the Bears are going to be in a close game. He thinks the Bears are going to get blown out by New Orleans. I think he said like 38-17 type of thing. It could definitely go that way, but for me, the X factor is, can the Bears run the ball? If the Bears can run the ball, they'll be in it. It will be close. It'll be a fun game. If the Bears can't run the ball, then it's over. And New Orleans in the Dome, and it will be the Dome Patrol the second half of the year because, as Eric pointed out, they only had 2 home games so far, or 3 home games so far in the first 7 games. So they're going to have more home games coming up in the second half of the year, which will be interesting. We're both picking Atlanta. I expect Julio Jones to have a big day. I won't be surprised if he has something like 200 yards receiving and 3 touchdowns. They'll spread the ball around. They'll run the ball. The Jets, they were my surprise team. They are my surprise team in the first half, but this is a tall order. I think Atlanta is going to come in mad and ready to kind of right the ship. I'm not giving up on the Falcons yet, And Eric is kind of starting to give up on Atlanta. He just thinks that this is a good matchup for the Falcons. I just think that this is going to be Atlanta's time to really kind of take that next step and, you know, make a push if they're going to make one. And it's got to be done on the road against the Jets. And we both think it will happen. At least a win this week. San Francisco at Philadelphia. No-brainer here. We're both picking Philly. We don't expect this game to be close. I think it'll be like 34-17, 31-17. You take your pick. Eric also thinks Philadelphia is going to win. I just can't wait to watch the continual maturation of Carson Wentz moving forward. He looks like he's really getting to be really good. And I go back to that draft, man. I don't ever remember a draft where I can honestly say that the 1 and 2 pick, in December 10th between the Rams and Eagles, I've never looked forward to a 1-2 matchup more than this one. I know everyone was hot, all high and mighty on the Mariota-Winston matchup, but that was the first game of the season of their careers against each other. This is year 2. Both are showing great maturation from year 1. Both are having a lot of success. Both are potentially going to be playing for a home field advantage spot in the postseason in that matchup. I'm really looking forward to that December 10th matchup, showdown between Philly and LA. But in the meantime, Philly should handle business against the San Francisco 49ers. Eric commented that both the Niners and the Browns were both staring 0-8 in the face. I don't think he's wrong there. He's picking Philadelphia. He thinks that LeGarrette Blount's going to really put up some crooked numbers, and that the Eagles are going to put up a high number like the Cowboys did and give up a low number like the Cowboys did, and that this game is going to look a lot like Week 7 for San Francisco. So if you're a Niner fan, I am truly sorry, and I am also sorry that we are not having anything optimistic for your team this year. But been there, done that. You guys know how that is. Pack it up and get ready for next year at this point. Carolina at Tampa Bay. Eric is picking Carolina. He's given up on the Buccaneers. And this is where my upset pick of the week comes in. I think that Cam Newton is an emotional wreck. He's selfish when it comes to the inside the 5-yard line. He refused to get McCaffrey involved in the read option. And if I'm the Buccaneers head coach, I tell my defensive ends that when they run the read option inside the 5, if you even take a step towards the running back, I'm going to remove you from the field. You are going to take your uniform off. You are going to put in the locker room. You are going to go home and wait for a phone call from your agent because I'm trading you. There is no reason anyone should be falling for Christian McCaffrey on a read option fake by Cam Newton inside the 5. Cam's going to keep it, and he's going to run it and make him pay for it. Pound him consistently. And he's just an emotional wreck. The guy doesn't know how to lose with grace. He doesn't know how to win with grace. He just knows how to be arrogant and conceited. And, this is a product of Auburn right here. It's a product of Auburn. I've never been a Cam Newton fan. I never will be a Cam Newton fan. And it's seasons like this where I see how easily he is to break down mentally that I go, oh, that's how you beat Carolina. That's right. I almost forgot. The Panthers aren't hard to beat. And with their defense losing their leader and their defense, which was the number 1 defense, giving up a lot of points, this is a road game. They haven't done well on the road this year overall. I know they got the big win in New England, but I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to pick Tampa Bay to win this game. Eric, on the other hand, complete opposite. He thinks Stewart's going to run all day. He thinks that they're going to be able to shut down the Buccaneers' offense, and the Buccaneers' defense doesn't have an answer for the Panthers' running game, so he's picking Carolina, so we disagree there. We also disagree on this one. Houston at Seattle. So as much as I don't like Cam Newton, that's how much I do like the Texans quarterback, Deshaun Watson. Deshaun Watson is an incredible football player, and I look back at the Tennessee-Seattle game when I make my pick here, and the reason I'm picking Houston is because I'm doing a homer pick and picking the Houston Texans because I want them to win anyway, regardless of whether I picked them or not. But for me, it really comes down to Marcus Mariota was able to tire out that defense, and then they just pounded the rock and they lit them up. The Houston Texans, on the other hand, don't have as good of a running game as Tennessee does, but they have a strong wide receiving core. They have a strong quarterback that can run all over the lot, and they've got speed to burn. And I just think that the Seahawks defense is going to be sucking wind at home, and I think Houston's going to win this one by 10 points or more, and I think it's going to surprise a lot of people. But then again, I also said Seattle was going to fall apart, and this is the beginning of the falling apart. So I think they're old, and I think this is going to be the moment where we see the kink in the Seattle Seahawks armor start to crack, and this is where the Texans are going to kick that door wide open. Now, naturally, Eric didn't think the same way. He's picking Seattle. He says Seattle at home, they're going to be too much. Deshaun Watson hasn't seen a defense like this, yada, yada, yada. Not to discredit what he said, but it was much of the same things that you're going to hear from the experts on the NFL Network. And Eric is really in tune with that, being a broadcaster. That's the element that he brings to the table. But he does seem to think that the Seattle Seahawks have one other advantage, that the statements that were made by the Houston Texans owner this week, he thinks is going to potentially be on the mind of the Houston Texans players. And considering how they handled Hurricane Harvey in week 1 against Jacksonville, I think he has a point in the sense that they may be a little, they could be a little distracted. And when this team's distracted, they don't play as well. But for me, Deshaun Watson is the X factor in this game. Dallas at Washington, you can bet that we disagreed on this one as well. I picked the Redskins. I think the Redskins are mad. I think the Redskins are getting bodies back. I think Thompson is a great asset. For the Washington Redskins, and they're not the San Francisco 49ers defense. And the Cowboys have struggled against good Ds all year long, and I don't see that stopping here. This is 2 3-3 football teams, and if you're honest with yourself and you analyze this, you have to admit that the Redskins are a better 3-3 than the Dallas Cowboys. Now, some may disagree and go, I disagree. Dallas went into San Francisco and put up 40, and San Francisco and Washington played in Washington, and the Redskins barely won. All valid points, but they were beat up and beat up and beat up and beat up. Now they're starting to get healthy, and I just think when it's a rivalry game, throw those things out the window. It's Washington and the Cowboys, and I just think that the Redskins are going to play mad, inspired, and motivated, and I think they're going to win. Eric thinks Ezekiel Elliott's going to have a big day with all of the injuries that the Redskins have. He thinks Dak Prescott's going to get to the outside and make big plays with his arms and his legs, and that's why he's picking the Dallas Cowboys. The Detroit Lions and the Pittsburgh Steelers, I can't believe I'm saying this, but I'm going to say it. There's no quarterback in modern football that I'd rather have at the end of a game than Matthew Stafford. And right now, Matthew Stafford and the Detroit Lions are home, and when they're home in that stadium, they play an infinitely better football game than they do on the road. I don't think that the Steelers' defense has seen a quarterback like Matthew Stafford all year long, and I think that's going to hurt them, which is why I'm picking the Detroit Lions in a close one. Eric, on the other hand, is picking the Steelers. He made 2 simple points. Who's going to stop Le'Veon Bell? Who's going to cover Antonio Brown? I make the statement who's going to throw to Antonio Brown because I don't think that Ben Roethlisberger is going to have a good day in the dome with the pressure that he's going to get from the Lions' defensive front four. But we'll see. He picked the Pittsburgh Steelers. I picked the Detroit Lions. The Monday night game, however, we did agree on. The Monday night game, I picked the Chiefs 34-13 over Denver. I made the statement that if you were still on the Denver Broncos bandwagon, you might be realizing right about now that the bandwagon or the wagon has stopped moving. That's because even the driver has jumped off the Broncos bandwagon. You might want to start joining the rest of the people because you're a person of one if you're on Denver's bandwagon. They're not a very good football team. They're all defense and nothing else. And now they got to go into an angry Kansas City Chiefs team who's lost 2 weeks in a row, once to Pittsburgh, and as if that didn't piss them off enough, now they've got it. Then you add the loss to the Raiders at the end of the game, the way they lost it, and they've had 11 weeks to let this, or 11 days to let this fester, and now they get the Denver Broncos at home in Arrowhead. I just think it's going to be a whitewash by Kansas City. Eric, for some of those same reasons, is picking the Chiefs, but he thinks it's going to be a much closer game. His score was 27-17. I think it's going to be a big win for Kansas City. He thinks it's going to be just an okay, good win for Kansas City. Sorry for the briefness of the show. The other show was literally half. This is half as long as the other show. The other show was 50 minutes, far more in depth in these games, a lot more back and forth and some more analytical analysis of it. But again, because of computer trouble and because of the Apple computer being a pile of human feces, it didn't do what I needed it to do. So you get a 25-minute show. So, sorry. just want to make one more point on this week's. Per Eric's request, he had mentioned this. Now that we're at the halfway point, we should start to be able to see the pretenders from the contenders and who's going to be the team to look out for in the postseason and who's just going to get there and get smoked and who's not even going to come close to getting there. Like I said, Seattle starts to fall apart, I think. Those kinds of things we're going to find out with Week 8. So hope you guys like the show. Sorry for the briefness. Sorry for the tirade in the beginning. I'm wearing my Redskin gear for the Redskins. Hopefully they beat Dallas. I think they will for the reasons I mentioned in the show. Can't wait for the Rams to pick up action next week. I'm Anthony. Eric is not on this show, although he was on this show, but because of the issue, the technical issues, he's not on the show. So on behalf of Eric and I, this is LA Rams Central, and go Rams!